Well, a warm welcome to you. If you've just tuned in, I'm Michelle Craig. Let's hone in on one of those headline stories now. As the deadline approaches for ANC members charged with corruption to step aside approaches, the party seems to be embroiled in an all-out battle. In the latest development, Secretary-General Ace Magashule has sent a letter to provincial secretaries asking for a list of all those implicated in corruption to be sent to his office. The party's National Working Committee subsequently clarifying that the list should include only those formally charged. So is this an attempt by Magashule to deflect the focus from him? Let's get you some analysis now on so many issues unfolding in the governing party. Our guest this morning is Ongama Mtimka from the Nelson Mandela University, who joins us via our video link in Gqeberha this morning. Ongama, great to have you on the show. And that's the big question. Where do we begin understanding what is unfolding in the governing party? You know, I'm reminded last week, President Cyril Ramaphosa at the wreath-relaying ceremony for Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, saying that unity in the governing party is turbocharged. He's saying all of the right things. There's a lot of diplomacy going about, but the reality is very, very different.
Yeah, good morning, Michelle. Thank you for having me this morning. We know that the ANC hasn't stopped being at war with itself. And in fact, I think what the latest attempt by the Secretary General, though in my view consistent with the constitution of the ruling party, it was an attempt to do what we call in chess strategy as pawn walling, where you bring together what otherwise are weak pieces, but you bring them together with an intention to wage probably a counterattack or a defensive strategy. I think that part of what Magashule's intention was to show that there's a lot more people in the ANC that are affected across the factional divide, and if he was able to demonstrate that, there would obviously be a much broader discussion that looks at the extent to which the action is weakening the organization itself as opposed to his own faction and himself. Now, the importance of that obviously is that it shows again to South Africans that by selecting people who are charged, the ANC is lowering the bar precisely because it knows that if it was going to focus, as per its constitution, on people who have brought the party into disrepute through acts of misconduct, there would be no party left.
Yeah.
So that's part of the strategy that I think ACE wanted to employ. Obviously, it's partly devoid of the fact that you will find that some provinces have already processed allegations against some of the people not formally charged but implicated. So, for example, Oscar Mambiane in the Eastern Cape has already presented his case when he was alleged to have been involved in tender kickbacks, and that seemed to have been to the satisfaction of the Integrity Committee in the province. So what you may find is that when that list went back to the Secretary General, if it was complied with, there would already be names of people over which the Integrity Commission in provinces has already ruled.
So, I mean, on the one hand, can I read what you're saying as, on the one hand, Ace Magashule was in some way doing the right thing in trying to show just how deeply rooted corruption is in the ANC, but on the other hand, it's a move that does play into his favor as well?
Yes, and this is only because it was the right thing as far as the principle is concerned, but wrong as far as what the NEC has decided. But him having done it is good for us as society because it shows he's now being opposed for actually saying everybody who has brought the party into disrepute as per Rule 25 of the Constitution. Now, it's almost like a similar situation where the EFF framed the ANC such that they would defend de Klerk in Parliament when it was the right thing to do, except that from a political strategy point of view, it gets one to flounder.
Yeah. I mean, Ongama, as I try to get a better understanding of the situation from you and from the various interviews that we do on the show insofar as what is happening in the governing party. I mean, how much more are ordinary voters, ordinary South Africans, looking at what's unfolding there and wondering where to from here, if indeed we do have even a local government election this year?
Thank you. So at the crux of the core message of what's happening in the ruling party is the idea that a philosopher, Thomas Hobbes, stated many years ago that in the absence of a center that is strong and is enforcing some rules, there would be a war of all against all. So what we're seeing unfold now is a Hobbesian war of all against all, in the sense that the leaks, for example, attempt to paint a narrative that says there are a lot more people who are critical of, for example, the Zondo Commission or supportive of President Zuma, and it's not all that we are seeing in the public domain in terms of who is for what in the ANC. That's the intention, which then creates the situation of war, a war of all against all. Because now Jessie Duarte feels she must come in and explain some things. As far as the voter is concerned, what's interesting for me, Michelle, is that there's nothing the ANC can do in the short term that's going to help them stymie electoral losses in 2021 and in 2024. But being seen to be cleaning up is important in order to position the party well to be able to rebuild after what I see is going to be a loss of electoral support, as a definite loss of electoral support between 2021 and 2024. And I can boldly say definite because a center that's not holding is not going to create an offering for South Africans which is going to be convincing. And we have already seen, based on your question again, that the voter behavior in South Africa is changing to be sensitive towards issues of, one, regime performance, secondly, electoral campaign craft. So because of those two things, then I doubt that there's anything that the ANC can spin. You can't spin these issues that the party is facing.
Yeah, there's only so much spinning can do. It's very interesting that you talk about being seen to be cleaning up versus actual cleaning up. I mean, those are two very, very different things. In terms of the president himself, Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the governing party, and how he's been dealing with what's unfolding in the ANC, is that the kind of strong leadership that is needed, or is the kind of diplomacy that he employs at every turn, is that what's needed here? Because the sense that many of us get is that it's more about the alliances and the various factions versus what is best for performance, let's say, for those people who are in your cabinet.
Yes. So when we look at this, Michelle, we must be mindful of structure and agency. Structure being, what does it take for somebody to remain in office in the ANC? Unfortunately, as you say, it has remained so far a function of what alliances is the person able to sustain while in office. That's precisely because one of the key things that make the ANC vulnerable to take over by people who do not mean well is that membership remains open to fraudulent activities. That's why, for example, recently, the Free State Conference was nullified, because it's known in the ANC, whoever controls the membership controls the outcomes of election conferences. Now, that is why President Cyril Ramaphosa's style of consensus building has tended to be a lot more preferred to him than as we would like as South Africans. But I think that there are instances where that consensus building style is failing to read the historic moment. Where the ANC finds itself is a situation where strategically whoever presides over it should not necessarily be concerned about loss of support and reduction to being a below 50% party, but more concerned about doing the right thing. the right thing is that bold and decisive leadership which rids the party of the elements that bring it down in the public eye, and actually precipitating the death of the party as we know it. Because in my view, only that positions the party well to succeed in future. So if you look at, for example, the appointment of Ongama Mtimka, among others, in the ANC Youth League, very inspirational leadership, people with good qualifications, people whose rhetoric for now is good and is unclouded by allegations of corruption. Those are good. That's a fertile soil for sowing the seeds of rebirth for the party in future. But not, my argument is that there's nothing the president can do now because of the, lethargy so far that can prevent the ANC from not falling below 50% come 2024 at least, and actually surviving or just making it in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. Ongama, that's all the time we have for this discussion this morning. I think we take the better part of another hour to unpack what's unfolding in the governing party. Thanks so much for your time this morning.